Hi there, Adapter TechX people. It's great to have you back. Big thanks to our friends at AHC QuestTech, our friends at No Vacancy, and of course, Hunter Gatherer who helped pull it all together. Today, we are going to talk about the notion of the flexible living revolution. I'm so happy to have an expert joining us today, Fred Lerche-Lerchenborg, CEO of Lavanda. And, you know, he's running a leading platform and leading thought platform as much as anything else as a PMS, a property management system. And it's a solution, a real solution for stays of any length across multiple categories of product, including real estate, all the way to, you know, anything that does short stays. Fred, it is great to have you today. Good to see you. How are you doing there?
Good to see you. I'm
this
good.
Really cool setting. Is that your office or your home?
It is my home, but also my office. So yeah, a bit of a
Outstanding.
cottage come home office. Yeah.
Now, what era is that from?
It is from 1700, so I guess about 300 years ago. Yeah.
Well, the good news is it's 1700 with outstanding Wi-Fi connection. So clearly you got all that worked out. So it's great to have you. So, you know, this is the rapid fire. And of course, to everybody, we are going to do an extended podcast right afterwards that, you know, will explore all these. So just for everybody out there, just to kick us off, Fred, you know, how do you define where you position yourself across the travel, tourism, hospitality, real estate world? How do you define that?
Oh, great question. So we effectively sit between three circles: multifamily, so where anybody can kind of live, communities, student, and hotels. And between those three very big circles, we see a convergence, and that's what we call flexible living. So where you have buildings where people are staying for any length of time, and we have our back to hospitality. We sell into those two markets that I mentioned.
Yeah, it's amazing how all these rings, as you put it, the circles are all overlapping with intersections right there where all the tech happens. Can you give us in the simplest form for everybody out there who is in techland, of course, about what does your tech do? Why are you different than others in the space?
Absolutely. So at our core is the belief that flexibility is probably the most important change that's going on. And that's typically along two axes. One is the length of stay. So people can stay 1 day to many, many years, and that powers things like digital nomads, different travel, students, long term, but also in terms of flexible consumer journey. So like hyper flexible and personalized, obviously automated by technology. And that is at the crux of our property management system. And then the rest of it cascades from there. But that is the number one premise and unique differentiator for us.
So I was reading that whopper of a 70-page white paper that you have that I just downloaded. And you know, you've got some partners in there, and they're coming from different angles between, you know, Hubble and others. Yeah, do you want to share with how did you all partner? And then you're a partner with Greystar and all sorts of unusual bedfellows, really. They wouldn't ordinarily talk to each other, right?
I think it's a great observation there. Actually, there is no natural, you know, incumbent doing this. It sits between all these different people. So that was an amazing piece of work for us because we had Hubble from kind of commercial, Eldar looking at the concept of sort of play, and Greystar looking in terms of living. All of them super interested in this bit of the middle between the rings. Like how does it intersect nowadays between live, stay, and work? And that was really driven by the pandemic, where almost all the cards reshuffled. And people didn't really quite know what to do, but everybody was interested in that. So we pioneered a bit of thought leadership, brought everybody together. They contributed all their data, and we kind of wrote up our foundings and said, hey, look, we really think something brand new is emerging in the middle of all of this.
And what was that brand new thing?
So the brand new is, how do you treat real estate where you can't guarantee for the next 30 years the behavior of everybody who's living there? And that's a really quite a fundamental thought when you start thinking about it. Like when you build a building in the middle of Chicago, you can't guarantee that the dynamics in that location are going to just be steady. The rate of change is too much now. People are moving out to suburbs because maybe a family. Pandemic moved people around a lot. We're seeing long-term rents jump up in certain areas. And equally, flexible working and nomadic living is not just some sort of esoteric edge case anymore. It's, you know, highly adapted right now, right? We've got people living and working in different locations and traveling around, but they all want a great consumer and technology experience. And unfortunately, the tools that are available right now are too static. They're too industry led, and we need to be consumer led and actually quite fundamentally rethink it. And that has a lot of knock-on effects when you start going through the tech stack.
So when you look at how to interface with very different partners.
Yep.
How are they connected? Are they APIs? Are you writing code to each other? Are they autonomous? I mean, obviously Hubble is kind of like, dare I say, a aggregator of how to access different types of products, right? So
Yep.
how are you making your product connect with them and vice versa?
Yeah, so well, we focus generally on solutions in the residential area. So that is our predominant thing, although we are interested in co-working. And there we are either the core, we have two solutions. One where we're either the core property management system, and we are effectively the hub and other things connecting to us, or we are just the short and medium term rental sort of solution, and we plug into long-term rental systems. And we absolutely, we have an open API framework. We're huge believers in that. Really transparent and open, and are always willing to partner with anyone who's interested and where there's a compelling use case.
When you look at volatility, what do you see as risks as a CEO over the next, call it, God, 6 months seems like a long time, but 6 months to a year?
Yeah, I mean, look, we like as a business, I feel a bit sort of we've been born through every major issue in the recent times. So, not just the
From
pandemic, but
2015 to
recession.
now, you've seen everything, right?
Yeah, so for us, diversification is the mantra, basically, across customer. So we're very focused on having a nice balance between enterprise, mid-market, and small partners. So there's different risks there. And then
Right.
geography, we're spread globally. Thankfully, not just the UK right now, but Europe, Australia, Middle East, and the US. So we try not to take on political risk. So right now, thankfully, again, we're not in places like Russia or others, but we focus very much on kind of customer vertical, and then kind of geographic diversification. And then the same thing on funding. We're very conservative. We've taken on more capital than maybe we could have chosen to at the time when we did, in order to extend our runway far out into the future. So even in terrible scenarios, we have runway for multiple years right now, and I think that's absolutely crucial in how difficult it is right now for startups.
And do you see what headwinds do you see? I mean, you've diversified yourself. That's great across all categories, but what headwinds do you see?
I think right now not a lot is being priced in terms of kind of the consumer recession that we're about to go through, and I don't think we've even really started on that, if I'm completely honest.
Right,
So I
right.
think once that starts happening, and you're seeing some firms already lay off people, but once that starts getting into your customer base and they start laying off people, then there comes pressure on innovation, right? Because at the end of the day, cutting edge technology is fantastic, but only when there's budget to pay for it. Thankfully, in real estate itself is actually pretty healthy right now, having had a rough pandemic, but right now people still need a place to live. But if the consumer recession gets harder and longer, and certainly in the UK, I think it will be very, very difficult, that will eventually start to hit your budget. So you need to think about your pricing, your tiers. How are you getting ahead of that problem, basically?
So, we've just covered a lot of topics, and again, we're going to cover a lot more in our podcast. But when you're speaking to audiences, your teams, other, specialists in the space, what tips and takes do you have, Fred, for whatever category you want to aim these at?
Yeah, I think, look, from my perspective and as a CEO of a tech company, there are a couple of things that we try to hold dear. So one of them is when you've got a new customer or even an existing customer, just over-resource customer experience. You cannot over-resource it enough. The second derivative of success from that customer and avoiding churn is so important. So just double down on that, cover it in love. And the second point, which I think is so important and underlooked in B2B, is never let design become a second-class citizen. People nowadays, even if they're on the most boring work tool, whatever, they expect it to be super easy to understand, and nobody wants to read a manual or go into, if people are going to a health archive, something's probably gone wrong. So some of those things can be really difficult when you're in a rough environment, but it's shortcuts for long delays to kind of under-resource those.
Perfect. You couldn't have said it better. Amazing. So thanks again, Fred, for taking the time again, and a superb platform. Take a look at it. Not very hard to find out there with Lavanda. That'll be on all of the work that we put out there and the edits and anything else we put out there about Lavanda, you'll find it. So thanks again to everybody for taking the time, and we will see you very shortly, and hopefully we'll hear you and you'll hear us on the extended podcast. So keep looking over the fence, and thanks for listening.